Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I'm your host, Joey DeMeglio. We're here with Ranger Central, the guys from there, Evan and Matt, and then John Filkowski from Big Apple Hockey. First time he's on Ice Cold Takes here. Glad to have you guys on. We're here talking about the JT Miller trade. Once again, every week it seems like there's big news regarding the Rangers. Last week, Will Borgen signed an extension. This week, JT Miller gets traded to the Rangers, comes back to the Rangers. So, I mean, exciting, not exciting. I don't know. How are you guys feeling about this?
I mean, it's a little. Today pretty much, honestly, summed up my feelings with the trade with the game, where it's like, okay, if he plays the way that we saw from last year and the season before, how much will it matter? Because it doesn't address the team defense because of the fact that they don't have four lines that they could roll out there to be competent, and the fact that a guy that didn't arrive to the hotel until 4 in the morning had to wake up and get to team meetings by 10 a.m. today, they were saying on the broadcast, played better than all of these guys that are softer than puppy shit. It just speaks volumes. It really does. Yeah, but in terms of the trade, we'll see how it goes. On the surface, I never hated the trade in terms of what they gave up. It's just that I still didn't love the idea in terms of the fact that of the direction that I would have preferred this franchise going in, but they're gonna go in. They extended Igor, and this is what it is.
And the trade was JT Miller, Eric Brandstrom, and Jackson Dorrington. They were traded to the Rangers for Filipino, Victor Mancini, and a protected first-round pick. That protected first-rounder is top 13 protected in this year's draft. If it's in the top 13, it slides to an unprotected 2026 first-round draft pick. And I believe that's the stronger draft class. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely the stronger draft class. To kind of piggyback on what you're saying, that pick has since been traded to Pittsburgh in the Marcus Pettersson deal. Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor for that first round pick. And I believe, what else was in that deal?
Dan Heinen was on the deal.
Dan Heinen, who I know Evan loves. Evan loves himself some Danton Heinen and Eric Robinson. So, but yeah, so that pick is now property of Pittsburgh's. And to kind of also piggyback on what Evan's saying, I think the value is really good on what they got for the player that they got. They're out of that contract at the right time at 37 years old. That's usually when the major decline in play starts with a lot of athletes, even the elite ones. So they get out of it at the right time. They get a player that they need. They get a guy who's, and even Ray Ferraro said it today, like they don't have a JT Miller on that roster. They don't have a guy that's meat and potatoes, that's tough, that's hard-nosed, that plays 200 feet, that has the skill to complement the other side of the game. Like he's a good two-way forward. Like, is he a Selke caliber forward? Probably not. Maybe he fits in the top 20 or 15 in voting at his best, but he's still a good and above average defensive player. So they got a guy like that for a guy who might be one hit away from retirement. A prospect that seems like he has some promise, but I don't see a super high ceiling on him, and a first round pick. So it's a good trade, and at $8 million, even if he starts to decline with the cap going up as much as it's going to go up over the next 3 years, that's not going to be a problem at all. So I like the trade. Totally with Evan on the fact that they did not address their defense, but Chris Drury said he's not done. And I gotta imagine. I said it before earlier on the stream that we did this morning. I know Evan was in the chat, but I think that Chris Drury is probably on the hot seat right now. And this is the type of move that you make when you know that you've got to make moves to, maybe not save his job, but maybe to get Dolan off his back a little. So I don't think he's done. I think they're going to go after a third line center, and I think they're going to go after a defenseman. We'll get more into that. We'll talk about names, obviously, but I have a strong feeling he's not done.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think the seat is warming up a little bit there. This is like the first big move Chris Drury has made for like a player with term and his tenure as a Rangers GM and president. Those other trades that he made were for rentals. Vetrano, Kopp, 1-year rentals. Tarasenko came 1-year rentals. Wenberg, Roslovic, 1-year rentals. One guy that really stuck around, Chad Ruedel. He's stuck around.
How
Even
is
Tyler Mott, they traded him for him twice. Matt, did you want to chime in before I gave my thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, I didn't like the deal personally. I didn't, and it's mainly due to the fact that I don't agree with the direction this team is taking right now. For me, they should have sold. Because they started off the season fine, okay, and they were all right. They were a decent team to
6-0-1,
start the
yeah.
season, and then they had that stretch where they just completely fell off. At that point, I'm like, look, just. And then we got to that point where it's like they traded Trouba, and I'm like, cool. Maybe they finally picked a direction to go in and say, listen, didn't work. We got rid of $8 million. We dumped that. Let's go from here now. And then they went and extended Igor, and I'm like, nice, man. Nice. We're just committing $11.5 million to a goaltender again, like we just did previously with what we did with Hankin. Look where that led to. It didn't lead to anything. And then, they were still pretty bad. Then they picked up their play a little bit, but even for me, like during that stretch, where they had that long point streak. I think it was like a 7-game point streak. To me, while they won a couple games, they picked up some points here and there in overtime. They still didn't look like that forceful, dominant hockey team for me. When I saw them play, they weren't dominating at 5v5. The defense was still all over the place. Sure, there was a couple games here and there where the defense looked solid, in a period or two over here. But in total, for me, the play style just it didn't match up with what the points and the results were. So I'm like, cool. Like you're a couple points out at that point. Like you could, you're at a point where it's like, okay, you could buy. But for me, like I said, I didn't look at them and say, let's go buy. To me, I'm like, okay, just go. It's probably going to be a seller's market this year because if you looked at the people that are going to be available at the trade deadline this year, it's not going to be a strong trade deadline. So it's going to be it's going to be a seller's market. It's going to be and you could get some good prospects back, some good picks here. I mean, like we just saw what San Jose did. They got a first and a third round pick back from Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci today, and that's why for me, like. I didn't like the Will Borgen extension either. I thought that was a guy that, because look, even though Will Borgen played well since coming over here, it was a small sample size. And for me, you don't rush to extend the guy based off a small sample size. That's just panicking and that's just poor GMing from Chris Drury. To me, you take advantage of a guy like that who's playing well and you reflip him from assets, whether, like I said, that's for picks or that's for a prospect. And then again, for JT Miller, listen, for me, JT Miller might be a good player coming back here. He scored the 2 goals. Great. We'll see how that continues. But for me, I don't like trading for him. And even the trade for me, like Evan said, it wasn't like who they gave up because like with Hedl, right? Hedl was a hit away from a career-ending injury. And for me, I'm like, they probably should have, because like if I was a GM, I probably would have looked to flip him in the offseason last year, or at least not. If you're not going to flip him, get some insurance from him, and they didn't even really do that. They brought in Sam Carrick, but that wasn't really even enough for that. And then it's like cool. Victor Mancini has potential. Would have been nice to keep him around. Sure, okay, you move him, and then the first round pick. But for me, with JT Miller, it's he's 32 now, 33 years old. For me, for a team that already has a short window and it doesn't look like they're going to win a cup this year, or maybe even for the next 2, 3 years, 4 years, maybe, I don't feel comfortable because now for the next like 5, 6 years, depending on what happens with Mika next offseason, you have $28 million combined tied up in Mika Zibanejad, JT Miller, and Igor Shesterkin. For me, that's just poor cap management. That you have that amount of cap tied in those 3 players because we've seen the decline that Mika's had. JT Miller, the decline could be around the corner. He's already 32 years old. We have to see how his body works. And with Igor, we've seen like, okay, cool, he's capable of putting up elite numbers, but then we've seen the long stretches that he's had where he's needed that mental break. And again, $11.5 million for a goaltender, you cannot afford to pay a goalie that much, and for him to require multiple mental breaks throughout a season. So for me, that's why overall I didn't like the trade personally.
I also want to piggyback quickly off of that in terms of just talking about why I don't love it in terms of the direction. I don't love also the fact that they are contradicting entirely the philosophy from last year, because last year they didn't want to go all in. They didn't want to push the chips in when it made sense. This year, now that it looks like you know what you have with this core, it looks like they are more on the side of fizzling out of either the playoffs, or at the very least, they're going to be like a first, second round team versus a conference finals team. You should have pushed the chips in last year, but this year you reward them for complacency. You reward them for giving a horrible effort in December. To me, that doesn't make sense either. Like, why is this group getting rewarded with a premier talent?
Yeah, that was the other thing I was thinking about, Evan, before I get into my points, is how they didn't push the chips in last year. Like, now it's so like painful, like it hurts my head to think about when the Rangers were so good last year. They had this, really competitive team, the President's Trophy winning team, the best team in the league, and the most you get is Alex Wenberg. That's the biggest piece you pick up at the deadline. Whereas all these other teams are picking up Gensel, they're picking up Thomas Hertl, they're picking up all these guys. The Golden Knights, Hannafin, right? Like, the fact you didn't
would have been nice.
go, Hannafin would have been great. The fact that you didn't push it in, it's like it's too late now.
And on top of that, sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to bring up too that was a year everyone was having a career year too. Like Trocheck and Panarin were giving you career years. Capitalize on that.
Yes, Lafreniere as well. Yes, but I'm with Philk on this one. The Rangers, I think, in my opinion, I think the Rangers needed to make this trade. I know you're looking at this team and it's like, this is not a cup team. And I agree. Zibanejad and Kreider, Panarin ain't it. Those guys are not it. That doesn't mean the fact that you trade for Miller doesn't mean that you have to keep Zibanejad and Kreider the rest of their contracts. You could find a way to move those guys out. I would much rather have JT Miller for the next 5 years than Mika Zibanejad. Have you listened to what Zibanejad is saying, like in his article, that article with Molly Walker? The guy doesn't sound like he cares at all. Like, I'm sure he does, but he's a shell of himself. He doesn't hit his one-timers. He doesn't score on breakaways. We were just talking about this before. That was his bread and butter. He had his patented moves, his forehand, backhand, his backhand, forehand on the breakaways. He can't get any of them to go in. He can't get the one-timer on the power play to go in. He can't even play defense anymore. The decline is real. And the fact that you bring in JT Miller, an alpha, the Rangers don't have that. They don't have an asshole on this team. They don't have their McKinnon. They don't have their McDavid. Every team that wins the cup has a guy like that or a true leader. And that's what I think the Rangers are lacking. So I know that Miller's old, 31, 32 years old?
31 years.
The fact that he's on the older side, it doesn't matter to me because he'll always have that competitive edge. That's who he is. And I don't care if he's slow or old, if people think he's a scrub. I'd still rather have him than Zibanejad. And is he perfect? No, not at all. But from what I've seen since he left the Rangers the first time, and they never should have given him up in that trade, one of the worst trades ever, is that he wants to win more than he wants to breathe. And he's not going to be afraid to say you suck. And an organization is desperate. This organization is desperate for a guy that's going to say that you suck, that you are dropping the ball and you need to be better, because everybody else on the team is just putting their hands up and being like, I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know what I did wrong. Trocheck, drop pass on a breakaway. Oh, yeah, I thought I didn't have enough time, so I thought that was the right thing to do. Pathetic. Like, this is the stuff that bothers me. I think bringing Miller in is a thing that they had to do, regardless of whether Drury is on the hot seat or not. And this is the first core-altering move, and I'm fully convinced this isn't the only one he's going to make. If he stays here, Chris Drury, I think in the offseason, Zibanejad and or Kreider are going to be moved. And any argument you have about Zibanejad and having Miller on at the same time on the Caps, moot if you get rid of him. You just have the $8 million Miller or the $8.5 million Miller as your player there.
So
that's what I think, guys.
I actually, to kind of like go piggyback onto what you were saying there, Joey. One thing that I talked about before with Anthony when we were on earlier was that, and I'm not trying to single Matt out, but for everyone who thinks that this is just like a now type of trade, like this is not a now trade. This is a now and going forward type trade, because one of two things can happen with this. One, he comes in and he's a spark that reignites the other guys. Zibanejad gets going. Kreider, maybe you can contribute this to him being hurt, but to me, it looked like even earlier on in the season, it looked like he was just kind of in a malaise after a little bit, like after maybe like the first like month or so. But I think that you can have somebody like Miller come in and not necessarily bully Zibanejad into moving his no trade clause, but you got to keep this in mind. There were talks about him that the Rangers went to him and asked him to waive to go to Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that there are more than just trying to kick the tires on him, getting him out of here. I mean, they could go to him after this season and be like, hey, we don't want you here. Like, we want to move on from you. And if that's the case, that they go back to him again, maybe he's more amenable to moving, after the season ends, because you remember, he's got a family. It's harder. That was a big problem with Trouba. Trouba didn't want to uproot his family. So you can always go back to a player in the offseason and say, hey, you know what? We don't have a future here for you. Like, we think that you need to move on. We think that we need to move on from you. And, if they can find a deal for him for a team that he'll waive to, maybe they can explore that and get him off the cap. So that could be another thing. Like, this could end up being a pathway to getting him out, not directly, obviously indirectly, but like in a way it could. But the one thing that I said like right away with this was that even before the trade was made was that this would be the first of a series of culture changing moves, because a lot of people are concerned, rightfully so, with how he would mesh with this locker room. Could he be any worse than what this locker room was when they flat out quit because the general manager hurt their feelings by moving Barclay Goodrow and Jacob Trouba and calling out the guys for playing like shit? Like, if that hurts your feelings and offends you, then you need to nut up and realize that you are making millions and millions of dollars to play a kid's game, and you're going to act like a spoiled bunch of entitled crybabies. Like, no. Like, you not only are you quitting on the general manager, you're quitting on Sam Rosen, whose final season it is. You're quitting on the organization. You're quitting on the fans. The people that go and pay your overbloated salaries, you're going to quit on because you don't like the general manager? Why don't you tell that to the 94 Rangers who made a heave-ho slogan because they thought Mike Keenan was a slave driver? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
So many people have dealt with so much worse than what these guys are dealing with. And they have the nerve to cry and whine and quit the way that they did. I don't want these guys around. I don't want anybody who had a helping hand in that. Bye, Felicia. Pack your bags. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to jump in on a couple of things with that. And I agree with the fact that they need a culture change. And I mean, we've screamed about it for months and just a while now. The problem that I have is with Miller in particular is just the fact that the age. If you were talking about bringing in a younger guy that is coming in to change the culture, and you could seriously like retool off of that to where, okay, you have 2 to 3 years to really, let this marinate and let the group get together. To me, there's just so much that has to be sent out from this group to where it's hard to envision it happening within 1 year. That's really where I have an issue. And if you're keeping some of these guys, these are the same guys that quit on Laviolette, same guys that, and again, Gallant was a dope in his own right, but they quit on him.
Mm-hmm.
They quit on the general manager. What is the incentive for these guys to not quit on JT Miller, who, again, alpha male, been a good player, but hasn't won a Stanley Cup? What is the incentive to not quit on him at that point because he's best friends with Trocheck? That's really the list of things that I could come up with there. If we were talking about him even being 2-3 years younger, I would be like, yeah, this is great because now you're starting to reshift the culture and you have a couple of years to really build this thing up. The problem that I have is the timeline of this, where you have so many aging guys on this roster to where you are counting on JT Miller changing the culture, Drury to retool a lot of this roster within a year or two. And if you don't win within, I would say 3 years, at most 4, with Miller here, then, I mean, you're going to have to go into a rebuild anyway. So it's just a lot has to be done in such a short window to where I don't know how they achieve that is my biggest problem.
I'll counter that. I don't mean to cut you off, Joey, but I'll counter that. And something we got to remember, they gave Igor Shesterkin that deal. So if you think that there's going to be a rebuild or retool or anything like that, nope, ain't happening now. The wheels would have had to really fall off the bus. And I don't even know if you could do it then after giving him that contract. Because now you look really, really bad because you committed $11.5 million to the one position that you're not supposed to commit big money to, because it inherently has less value than centers, wingers, and defensemen, because it's like a running back in football. That's why you see 1 or 2 drafted in the first round if you're lucky in a good year. And that's why historically the contracts for goaltenders have not been that good. But you gave $11.5 million for him to be like Dominik Hasek, and he's not Dominik Hasek. So now you have to worry about winning within his window. It's not JT Miller's window you have to worry about. It's Igor Shesterkin's window. And that's why Chris Drury did this, because he's doubling down on a mistake that he made. And listen, if this is a mistake deal, this is actually not a bad mistake deal in the sense that you didn't give up a lot to get him. And the $8 million, by the time that deal ends, it ain't going to be much. I mean, if the cap is supposed to go up to what, 113 million, I think they said, in 3 years. That's nothing. That's not even 10% of the contract of the cap. That's not even close to 10%. I think that's like 7%, if that's the case. So
and I agree with that.
When McDavid's a Ranger.
Yeah. We could only hope.
Yeah.
And I agree with you at the Igor point, because that's what I opened up with, but it's really just because of what Matt said too, where it's just a trickle down effect of move after move, and it's just Drury's panicking. I'm not disagreeing with you in terms of why the deal happened and the merits, and in terms of that's the direction they're going in. Yeah. I can't argue that is clearly the direction.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't agree with it. And it is what it is.
Hey, you know my stance on that.
Yeah.
You know I wanted a rebuild. You know last offseason I said rebuild. Yeah. That's why I didn't want Igor getting that contract, because you could actually rebuild. But you can't do it now.
Yeah.
If had Shesterkin been signed for 1 year longer, had he signed a 5-year deal instead of the 4-year deal, like when Drury signed him to that, you guys know what I'm talking about. Had he signed that extension 1 year longer,
actually, was it a 5 or was it a 6?
I thought it was a 4-year deal. Maybe it was a 5.
It was 4 or 5.
Well, in either case, if it was just a year longer, where we're not talking about the extension this season, we're talking about it next season. I mean, I don't think Shesterkin stays. I think Shesterkin's gone, because if they have this exact same season like this,
no, you're right. 4, very good.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah, memory D.
Memory D.
It was a 4-year deal. Yeah. Yeah. If that was a 5-year deal, let's say, I think we're seriously considering a rebuild here. We're not looking I don't know if this JT Miller trade happens. I'm seriously think that we're looking at who's going to be Shesterkin's going to be the biggest trade piece on the board either this year or next year if it's a 5-year deal. And in that case, I mean, it doesn't help the Rangers here. It doesn't help them. But the good news is I think it's possible for Drury to get out from under the Zibanejad and Kreider contracts. And I think those are the biggest issues. Probably you might have to move Panarin too. You might have to move him too because he's not helping you out too much this season. So many guys are not pulling their own weight this year. It's insane. That's why I say it all the time. That's why they're in the position that they're in because they're the guys that they need to be reliable and not pulling their own weight. And I still think that this trade is like an attempt at catching lightning in a bottle. And that's why you see the protection on the first round pick because they're not in a playoff spot right now. If they miss the playoffs and that becomes a lottery pick and it's an unprotected pick, they're screwed.
Super bad.
That would be terrible. We would all be like, I don't even know what to say for that. Like, obviously, you got to fire Drury for that. If he gives up an unprotected first round pick and you win the lottery and you have a chance to draft a franchise, this guy, James Higgins, is great. He's awesome. Great at both ends of the ice. If he goes first overall and the Rangers have a chance to pick him and it's not you, you should be fired. Like that's what I'm looking at with this trade is that it's trying to catch lightning in a bottle when the Rangers are in a position where you don't know if they're a tweener team. They're a tweener team this year. After being an Eastern Conference finalist 2 of the past 3 seasons, they're a fucking tweener team. That is nuts.
Unacceptable.
Nuts.
Before I let any of you go, Eric Robinson just scored a goal, by the way.
Mitch Marner just scored a beautiful one. If anyone's watching the Toronto-Edmonton game, oh my God, the passing between Nyes, Marner, and Matthews are just unreal. It's what I was going to say was actually it goes to sort of to Chris T's comment is that we talk about wanting a rebuild and that they should have done a rebuild. Got to remember, these guys have trade protection. Zibanejad, I mean, I don't know if they were going to be able to get him to waive his no movement clause this past off season. Like they had a hard enough time with Trouba, who circumvented his protection and put that crap out there about not wanting to play wherever he ended up getting dealt, and then sulked after coming back and not being wanted. Like what did you expect to happen? Like they told you that they wanted to move you, and then you cry about it, and you show up and you play like a complete ass clown. Like, come on, man. Like, and then you have Zibanejad, and then you have Kreider's got no move protection. I think until the end of this year, and then I think his protection comes off, and it's hard to move these guys. So it's not really possible to like do a complete rebuild.
Yeah, but if you tell these guys that you're rebuilding, then that's different. Go, Matt.
Well, that was the thing I was going to say. Like with Joe, you brought up the point that you could move Kreider and Meek, and I'm like, I'm not so sure about that. With Kreider, I think you could because he already had a modified no movement clause this offseason, and then he has it for one more next year, and then he hits free agency. But I mean, even then, if his back problems continue to happen, and I mean, I know NHL GMs aren't exactly the smartest people around, but is someone willingly going to be able to give up assets for a guy making $6.5 million with a broken back already?
Marcus Pettersson went for a first round pick. I don't know how that.
I know, but listen,
I'm telling you, man.
I know, but listen, and then to the point with Mika, right? I mean, like, because this was the point I was gonna say, right? Like with Mika, like the guy has
someone. I'm sorry, Matt. Someone will take Kreider if they took Trouba and Goodrow. But go.
Listen, maybe they will, but I guess we'll see, right?
Go.
But and then the point with Mika, right? Like Mika has a full no movement clause, and for me, like I was gonna say, right? Like if you were to go back in time a little bit, like when they traded Trouba, and then they didn't give Igor the extension, and then they were able to trade him off. At that point, I think you would be able to convince Mika to waive his no movement clause, because at that point, if you're trading Igor, you are signaling a rebuild or a retool at the minimum. And at that point, you could kind of convince Mika's like, okay, listen, you guys really don't want me. You guys are obviously going in another direction. cool. I'll waive my no movement clause. I'll move. Like now, like let's say like you go through the rest of the season, right? Whatever happens, right? And they don't win the cup. Now you go into the next off season, and they go up to Mika and they say, "Listen," and Drury goes up to Mika and says, "Listen, we want to move you. You know, we want to go in another direction. We want to retool." Well, hold on, like Mika, while we might criticize him for his play on the ice, I'm sure the guy's not stupid. He looks at the fact that you just extended Igor for 8 years. You just brought in JT Miller on a long-term deal. You just extended Will Borgen. Those three moves signal to me that you're not retooling. That signals to me that you're going for it again. So if I'm Mika and I'm comfortable, you know, living in New York, I've been here for many years. I'm comfortable, have my family. Why the hell now would I up my no movement clause and now go somewhere else? To me, that just doesn't make any sense. Like I said, if you were to go back in time and, you know, not do that Igor extension and then trade him and then move other pieces, like I said, then you'd be able to convince him. But at that point, you know, if I'm looking from his point of view, I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. And then again, like, you know, like Phil brought up, you know, with like trying to move on from Trouba last year, and the fact that Drury had a hard time doing that. Trouba had a modified no movement clause in the offseason, and he couldn't do that. And then we saw the type of shitstorm that he kicked up as a captain. So now you go to Mika next offseason and you try to force him out. You know, he could just say, I'm not going anywhere. And then he goes into next season, kicking up a shitstorm. And since Drury's already under, you know, he's on the hot seat already, and he needs another good start, you know, going to next year to keep his job. Well, now if Mika kicks up a shitstorm in there, we're in the letter A, and now you get off to another poor start, you know, Drury's pretty much on the verge of going already. So at that point, he's probably going to go. So. Yeah. So I mean, like you mentioned, like you could trade Kreider and Mika, but that's not going to be so easy.
The way you get Mika to move is by moving Kreider.
Yeah,
that's the way you do it.
But even then, okay, you do that. That's still not a guarantee he waives either.
It's no guarantee, but he's more likely to waive at that point. That's his best friend. That's it.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to think of it this way. So if they were going in like a package deal together, then yeah, that would make sense because then they get to stay together. But one, no team is ever trading for both of them in a package deal. Two, why would he waive then to go to another team if Chris Kreider and him are not going to be on the same team anyway? Why would he uproot his family instead of just staying here?
No, I get that. I do get that, but at the same time, Matt was talking about, well, you know, you're not signifying a rebuild by bringing in Miller, by, you know, signing Shesterkin. You don't have to signify a rebuild. You just have to signify a different direction, and a different direction doesn't necessarily mean rebuild. You could be reshaping the roster. So by moving Chris Kreider and getting rid of a guy that is highly respected in terms of Ranger all-time greats, as low as the bar is, that signifies a change in plans. That signifies that no one's safe. So for me, if that's the case, I think personally, and this is just gut, obviously I have no way of, you know, validating any of this, quantifying it, whatever, but I would imagine that Mika Zibanejad would be more amenable to being dealt. Like the fact, I will say this again, the fact that they approached him about being dealt for Miller means that they have had talks about moving him and that they are serious about moving him. And if this play continues, I'll tell you right now, if anyone, I don't know if any of you have ever worked in like a truly hostile work environment, but it's not fun. Like a place where you know that you're walking around on eggshells in, that feeling's not good. So if that's what it ends up becoming, then yeah, because that's what this whole Miller-Pettersson thing, that's what it ended up becoming. Everyone was walking on eggshells, and they had to move one of them to kind of to settle the locker room down. I don't think they're going to move Pettersson. Whole other story, another discussion another time. But you don't want to walk on eggshells when you're at work, because it's not fun. You start to get that anxious feeling, and you're not productive. You know, and sometimes you don't even want to produce. Sometimes you just don't even want to go in. You're just like, nah, screw it, I'll call in today. So it's if it gets to that point with Zibanejad, with the management, and we've seen that Chris Drury is not afraid to go to players and tell them that you need to be better and call them out. Like, I'm not even talking about this stuff that happened this year. Remember when he went to Panarin before the start of last season? And then Panarin shaved his head? And then he had the best season of his career? I mean, he's not afraid to have those discussions. He may have one of those with Mika Zibanejad.
And it's probably even worse too with professional athletes because you're dealing with the boss is handing you millions of dollars. It's not like thousands of dollars a year like for a normal job. So think about how mad that person's going to be if it's like James Dolan, for example, walking in there, or Chris Drury walking in there. It's going to make it worse. You know?
I know people who work with Dolan.
Yeah.
I know, and I know somebody who worked directly on. I actually know 2 or 3 people who work directly under him. That's not someone you want to piss off.
Right.
That's not someone you want breathing down your neck because he will breathe down your neck.
Yep. And the thing to me is going back to what you guys, Matt and Evan, were saying about, moving on from like Shesterkin. I don't think anyone could have predicted this fall off like the way the Rangers had this season. I don't know, like the drop off from President's Trophy to lottery contending team. Did you guys have that on your bingo card? I didn't.
No.
I couldn't foresee that. I don't know.
No, I didn't think that they drop off that far.
Like you at least thought it was a playoff team, though, right?
I thought, like, for me going to the season, I thought they'd be a second or third place team in the Metro.
Yes.
But
that's how I felt.
But I thought for me, I'm like, they're second or third place in the Metro, but I thought at most they'd be second on the exits. And to me, I'm like, I look at this when I was looking at this roster going into the season, I'm like, I don't see a long-term vision that's going to lead to a cup, which is why I really wanted them to go get Gensel last year, because that was the all-in move. That was the point where you said, listen, we're at this point now. Let's make the move now because there's no guarantee we'll be back in this position next year. And when I was looking at the roster going to this season, I'm like, okay, like they're not going to win. They probably won't win a cup next year, And I was signaling that I wanted a retool in the offseason. So, and for me, I said multiple times in the offseason, I would have traded Igor. So I was on the trade Igor boat a long time before, the start of the season and that bad streak even happened. So for me, I'm like, listen, and I will always have this viewpoint, and it's just my own philosophy. I will never, ever, 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 ever be comfortable with giving a goaltender over $10 million on a long-term deal. I will never be comfortable with that. And that's just my standpoint. And that's why for me, when they got eliminated by Florida last year, I'm like, cool. We didn't win. Let's go in another direction. Let's get rid of Igor so we don't have to worry about the headache of, a long-term extension, because I didn't want to make that same mistake that they made with Hank a decade ago.
And in terms of how I felt going into the year with this team, I thought comfortably playoffs. I thought that the teams that I thought would finish ahead were New Jersey and Carolina. I thought Washington maybe had a chance, because the problem for me is that they were too busy sitting back this offseason, watching other teams get better. And they just said, you know what? We won the President's Trophy last year, even though it was by the skin of their teeth. And they're like, you know what? We don't need to get better. We'll just go ahead and make some lateral moves and call it a day. And
the same direction as the trade deadline.
Exactly. And then with the Trouba drama, I knew that was going to be a dark cloud going into the season. And I knew that was going to cause some sort of drama. And I don't understand how nobody was talking about how that was going to be a problem, or at least not as many people, because it was clear as day that if you try to trade your captain in the offseason and it got as ugly as it did with the way it was leaking out through the media, it was painfully obvious that this was going to affect the room. And it ended up being that way. And when they got off to the start they did, I'm like, all right, maybe I was wrong. And I thought, all right, they'll just be a playoff team and it will just be the same as last year. And then the drama started to happen, and now it showed their true colors in the locker room. And the thing that sucks is that there were warning signs last year, even that this could end up being the case in terms of the team falling off, with the power play becoming more predictable, with the 5v5 play never showing drastic improvements. And all it took was Igor slumping more for this team to completely go off the rails. And both of those things happened with the power play and Igor, and that's how we ended up here. And I agree with Matt entirely. We were both saying this offseason, go in a retool direction. Like, go the direction of that, because you will avoid some of the drama with the contracts, and it's better to get a head start on it than to sit around and wait. They sat around and waited, and now it forced Drury into making panic moves, like extending Igor, like extending Borgen, who they just acquired, and now like getting JT Miller.
I suppose that would have, going in a retooling direction would have solved more problems than it would have created, because I think Drury and a lot of fans, myself included, I think a lot of them were looking at it as, okay, we made the conference finals. We were the best team in the league. 2 out of 3 years we're conference finalists. We still have the same exact team. How could we be any worse? Let's, try and keep a roster the exact same. Let's try and bring everybody back. Like, I could understand that, but at the same time, the red flags are there, man. Like,
it's what Nicholas, or sorry, said the name wrong, but Nico, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. Either way, it's what he was saying in the chat here.
D-men couldn't get the puck out of their own end last year. Also a very big issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's why, I mean,
hasn't been addressed.
Everybody wanted Gensel, but I don't think Gensel would have made a difference against Florida. Like, if you want to argue that Noah Hannafin would have been the difference maker, okay.
Yes.
Sign me up on that.
No, that's where I want to jump in. If they just LTIR Trouba like they should have, they could have made a series of moves on defense and up front.
Yeah,
that's what my argument was, that I would have rather seen them do.
And they had the assets too to do it. They had first-round picks. They had Othman, Perot. They could have offered Kako, everything. Keedle, even if they wanted to. Like, if anyone would have taken him, I know he was injured at the time. They had the ammunition to get these trades, and they just stood idly by. They just stood idly by. And I think this evolves into like a bigger conversation about the Rangers organization. It's just, they aren't without fault. And I think the biggest reason, this just to kind of transition for you guys, is like the biggest reason for why the rebuild hasn't worked out the way we hope, where the younger guys are leading us into the future, is because of a failure to admit when they're wrong. Like, every single step of the way is like Jeff Gordon, John Davidson, Chris Drury, James Dolan, even Peter Laviolette, head coaches, David Quinn, Gerard Glant, all of them failing to admit when they're wrong, like playing guys that they shouldn't be playing, trading guys that they shouldn't be trading, holding on to guys when they shouldn't be holding on to them. Like Kako last year should have been traded in the Gensel trade. Libor Hayek, why is that guy still playing? Vitaly Kravtsov, why the hell did we draft him? Lias Anderson, why did we draft him? Why did we hold on to him? You're fortunate.
Because Gordy Clark thought he was the smartest guy in the room.
Right. Zach Jones, what are we still doing hanging on to him? Nils Lundqvist, what is his purpose here? All these guys, they never developed them. So many guys never panned out here. You can't say it was all on them. When are you going to look at yourself in the mirror? This isn't just like the rebuild. This has something to do with like the deadline, like what we were just talking about right now, like with the Shesterkin extension. Should we have retooled? Should we have rebuilt? Should we have blown the core up? Should we have made the Miller trade? Should we have not made it? It's all about like a reflection type of thing, is the fact that they can't admit that they're wrong. And I think that's a huge issue. What do you guys think?
No, I was just gonna back up to the point that Phil mentioned about, like, Gensel doesn't work. And listen, for me, like, okay, maybe Gensel doesn't work and they don't get over the hump and beat Florida, but at least for me, I would have been like with Drury. I'm like, okay, cool. At least you went for it though, because it's the same thing. It's like the same thing like with what Carolina just did. They went out and they got Mikko Rantanen. So maybe they won't win the cup this year, but you know what? At least I can look at Eric Tulsky and that franchise, and I can say, you know what? They came up short, but at least they went for it. And the Rangers didn't do that last year, and they settled. they went and they got Wenberg, Roslovic, and Chad Riedel, and we all said that trade deadline wasn't good enough to go and win it all, and they came up short. And then Joey, the point that you brought up about accountability, I agree with you on that, because look at the difference between the Mets and the Rangers right now. Go back to 2023 with the Mets, right? Where 2022 they go out, they spend all that money, they bring in Scherzer, they bring in Marte, Canna, Escobar. They go out, they win 101 games, and same thing. Look what happened. They had a stagnant trade deadline. They went to the wild card series. They lost the Padres. Then what do they do in the offseason? They said, okay, we won 101 games. Let's stay complacent. Okay, sure. You swap out DeGrom, you bring in Verlander, but for the most part, right? They say we're going to run out the same roster again. And again, look how that season worked out. It didn't. They had to go into the trade deadline and sell off guys like Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander and take on money just to actually recoup solid prospects back. But look at the difference.
The biggest difference right
look at
there.
the difference what the Mets did. Steve Cohen and the front office, they recognized that what they were doing did not work, and they shifted a change. And now look how much better in a position that the Mets are right now. The fact that they just last season, that was supposedly a transition year. Cool. They started out poorly, but they bring in David Stearns. He makes all these nice little smart under the radar moves. They win 89 games. They get to the NLCS. They go out, they sign Juan Soto in the offseason this offseason. And now, they're going to, sure, listen, the roster's still not complete, but you can at least look at this roster and say, going into the season, they are a World Series contender. And that's the difference. The Mets had that's why I said about the roster. It's not done yet, but if they bring in a couple more pieces, they can contend for.
I wouldn't be happy with their offseason as a Mets fan outside of you go and get Soto, great. But what did you do to balance out that lineup otherwise?
I'll wait. Are we shifting the baseball here?
No.
I mean, no. I'm going to try not to get too much into baseball.
I know. We'll go back to baseball at the end if we have time.
But it was just to finish up my point, Joey. The point of accountability. The Mets and Steve Cohen saw that what they were doing was not working, and they changed. And the Rangers, they didn't. They said, let's continue on that.
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I don't, because I honestly think JT Miller is a culture changing move. When you bring in a guy like that doesn't want to lose, that has that dog in him, and like I said, Ray Ferraro said it its best. This roster does not have that. There's not even Trocheck is like that, and Trocheck's the one guy that everyone thinks should have a captaincy if they were to pick a captain right now.
Not yet.
I don't think they should, but it's another story.
No.
You bring in a guy like that, and you talk about Jordan, you talked about before, the McKinnons, the McDavids, guys like that hate to freaking lose. That's what Miller is. We didn't have that. Zibanejad, we lost. Oh, okay. I guess I'll go DJ on a beach in Ibiza. That's really not that bad, is it? Let me just take April to September off, and I'll be in Ibiza with my wife and my kid, and I'll just throw some dirty little beats down on this little private beach here. Fuck you. Like, you don't care. You clearly don't care, and that's why he needs to waive. And if I'm Chris Drury, if I really want him out, I go up there and tell him the same thing. You play like you don't give a shit. Play like you don't care. I don't know what's going on with you. Let things get ugly. He'll get out. Tell you right now, once things get really ugly, he'll want out. And that's why Trouba agreed to a trade eventually, because things got ugly. It's going to happen.
Yep.
If this continues, I have a very good feeling it's going to happen. When? I don't know. But it will.
There's a very clear difference between guys that want to win and guys that don't want to lose. It's you need to have in sports, you need to have a good balance of both guys. The Rangers don't have any guys. They had no guys that hated to lose. Maybe Shesterkin, but can you even count him? He's a goalie.
Hate to lose.
That Moneyball clip. I mean, say what you want about the movie and analytics, how you feel about it, but that like one scene where it's like, I hate losing. I hate it. I hate losing more than I even want to win. And there's a difference. That's that's like crucial to understanding all of this stuff. But Phil, do you think like this Miller trade? Do you think that's Drury recognizing there was an issue? I know you said that this is a panic move, but do you think this is Drury also saying, yeah, we made a mistake getting all these passive guys. We need to get an asshole in here. We need to get an alpha.
Absolutely. I don't think it's a panic move in the sense that, oh, he's just trying to save the season itself and his job like immediately, like, and that's gonna turn everything around. It's like, this is not the one move that's gonna save your entire franchise. They need to make moves on defense. Like, there are too many guys that on this team. Like I said, it's a culture changer, but it's the first in a series of culture changing moves. You bring in a guy like this, you're changing your locker room by doing that. You know, this is the type of guy that drags everybody into the fight. And you need those guys. They don't have that right now.
We all would have been ecstatic if it was Brady Tkachuk. We all would have been like that. But let's be real here. It was never going to happen.
I know. Everybody wants Brady Tkachuk. Yes, I get it. And you know what? Maybe they can go and make that move in the offseason. Do I think that it's going to happen? No, I don't. I don't think he's going anywhere right now. But, you know, if they wanted to go and offer up Gabe Perreault and first round pick and then some other prospect or a youngish roster player for Brady Tkachuk, like, you know what? That would be another move. That would be another move in this series of moves of changing around. But they clearly don't want like these soft players who play a perimeter game. And that's why when Artemi Panarin's deal is done, his days as a Ranger are done. He's not getting re-signed. I can tell you that right now.
I wanted to get into that conversation too, since we haven't, is that if they could find a way to get Panarin out this offseason, I think that would be the best way to fully retool this roster, because you'd get the best value there out of any of these guys that you would be moving, and it would send a huge message and it would be a huge shakeup. Like, that's a move that I could get on board with. Is it going to happen? Probably not, because I can't envision Panarin waving. But if you could find a way to get him the wave, that would be something that I'd love to do. And I actually, that I told you in the chat earlier for your stream that I thought about potentially like some mock trades there for Panarin. And
if you have them, let's hear these.
I don't have a lot of the specifics for it, but like a base idea that I was thinking.
Okay, Elliot Friedman. I can't tell you the specifics, but I know that something might be brewing.
I wonder about Colorado and Artemi Panarin. But that's where I was going with this, because there was that whole interview that Panarin did when he first signed here with that Russian interviewer where he was like doing a walk around the city or whatever, and they were talking about you know, why he chose New York, and he was saying his second choice was Colorado, and his wife wanted him to go to Colorado, so that's why I mentioned them. And I don't know who you would get from there, but like if you get a base package of like Arturi Lehkonen, you get someone like Sam Girard for the blue line, maybe you get a prospect in there, some draft picks, you know, that would be a move that intrigues me and it opens up the cap.
Rumbling saying Evan likes Eric Robinson. Let's see where this goes. Sources are telling me that Evan is kicking the tires on Eric Robinson.
Evan is.
I'm not even kicking the tires.
Robinson details to follow.
I'm not even kicking the tires. He's here.
He's studying a trade to get Eric Robinson.
Oh my God!
We're gaining a lot of traction here.
Can the Capitals go back to these Screaming Eagle jerseys, please? Like, we have enough red, white, and blue jerseys in the NHL.
Did Toronto just blow the lead? Oh my God! Toronto blew their lead.
Toronto sucks. They're so bad. They're gonna make the playoffs and choke once again. They'll probably get knocked out in the first round.
But
like I was saying, maybe raise an eyebrow. I'm interested. My interest is peaked. I like that.
Listen, I'm not saying that any of that's realistic, and because they're probably not going to move Panarin. But if
shouldn't move him before Zibanejad.
If you're going to retool, I actually disagree there, just because I think you could get so much more value for Panarin.
I know you can't. I know you could
I
get
just
more
don't
value.
think it's anything. I don't.
I agree
really
there.
don't.
That's the issue, is that, but that's, again, it goes back to the root of the conversation here, where it's like there is so much that needs to be done in such a short amount of time to win within this window, where it's like, I don't know how you do it.
That's why I didn't want the Igor deal, because, like I said, thankfully with the cap going up as much as it's going to go up, it actually, because I didn't anticipate the cap going up this much. I thought the cap would go up a little bit.
It's
But the
insane.
big, what's that?
It's insane what it's going up to. 95.5 million from, what is it, 88 million this year? Then the year after that, it's 104 million. The year after that is $113.5 million. And these are penciled in too. It could go up higher.
It could go up higher, they're saying. Yeah. And Bettman was on the ESPN broadcast before, and he was talking about that a little bit. But the thing is that if you gave him this type of money, I mean, if the cap didn't go up significantly, you can't find other ways to make room. Like, now you're going to punt 1 to 2 years of that contract. And then you're giving yourself like a 2 to 3 year window realistically to win. Because in years like 5, 6, and 7, Shesterkin is going to be in decline. And that's exactly what happened with Lundqvist. Like, the last 3-4 years of that deal, he was really not that good. Like, after 2017, he was okay. He wasn't great. He wasn't anywhere near where he was 2 years before that in 2015, where he was still where he was a Vezina finalist. I think he was the runner-up.
And you really can't compare Shesterkin to Lundqvist, because Shesterkin is nowhere near as good as Lundqvist.
And that's the whole point. You don't pay a guy that can't carry a team, especially if you're going to turn around and blame the defense every fucking time he lets up a goal. Oh, the defense is at fault. The defense is at fault. Okay, then that means that the goaltender depends on the team in front of him. So you don't pay him like he's Dominik Hasek in 97-98. And you pay him like Connor Hellebuck.
I'll echo what Tony Evan once said. Make a fucking save.
I literally almost posted that before on my Twitter, and I said, make a damn save. But the tweet that I had was, it was that last tweet I had about the Rangers from earlier on today. And
Phil was definitely a menace with Xbox Live messages back in the day. I swear. Definitely.
That's
besides
been around in Xbox Live chat in 2007. They were friggin' bad.
Got to keep room for McJesus in the event he makes it to UFA in 26. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, no doubt about that. But it's like, you've got to, you can't sit here and the Jason Giambi trade to the Rangers. I never, ever said that. Back after this. Fucking Mike Francesa. No, I literally, it's the Keandre Miller trade that started from an unforced Miller turnover. Cannot have efforts like that. Igor Shesterkin also has to make the big save at some point. I literally, the tweet that I had ready to go was Igor Shesterkin also has to make a fucking save at some point. That's literally almost what I put. I changed it. I was just like, you know what? Fuck it.
We're fucked.
I was telling Evan before we started the stream, I already know there's someone in the Rangers organization saying, see, we got all this young talent, but none of them panned out. So let's go back to how we were running our organization before. Screw rebuilding. It takes too long. And they'll never be a dynasty.
Yeah, that's really where it comes into play. With all this conversation, is that them screwing this much of the rebuild up and going from 3 years ago having the youngest roster in the NHL to where they are now, they're never going to rebuild again. And that's why we're in this spot and we're fucked. I don't know how else to say it.
I was just so exciting when they announced
that's Dolan's fault that they fucked up the rebuild.
I was just thinking to myself earlier today, their first round picks from 2017 to 2020. look at their first round picks. Elias Sanderson, bust. Filipino, gone. Vitaly Kravtsov, bust. Nils Lundqvist, bust. Traded.
And gone.
Keandre Miller probably should be on the way out of here because I'm not giving that guy $6 million a year to staple him on the blue line. 2019, Kako, bust, gone. And then 2020, Schneider, okay. Laffy, you know, he had a nice season last year, but he exactly hasn't improved on that season this year. I mean,
You should have been here when.
Oh, what a goal!
You should have been here when
Yeah,
I
but
ran.
just one.
When Nick and I ran the exercise of just revisiting their draft with just all of their draft picks from the rebuild. So the 2017 draft, you have no one on the roster now. The 2018 draft, you have Keandre Miller, who might be on the way out. The 2019
I said
draft,
that, Bluegrass.
the 2019 draft, you have Matthew Robertson in the organization, who is at best a fringe NHL defenseman. Kako, who got moved, and then you have Zach Jones, who the organization is just alienating. But you got a fourth liner in Adam Edstrom, I guess, so that's good. 2020 looks like their best draft, but even then, you got a first overall pick who doesn't know what back checking is and has just been invisible since signing that contract. You got a third pair right shot defenseman and a couple fourth liners and a guy that should be in the NHL in Brett Berard, but isn't. 2021 was 4 years ago, and you have a total of 3 NHL games played from that draft class. So that's what you're looking at with the rebuild. Wonderful.
Anthony said, friend of mine said signing Igor, I agree, was a bad move. The money wasn't the worst part. It's the fact they gave him a full no trade clause.
Both of it was bad.
Both of it is really bad.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you justify paying, and you got to remember, Connor Hellebuck is literally the standard bearer of goalies in today's NHL. He's led the league in saves and shots against 3 times since Igor has come up. He's done it 4 times in his career. He won his second Vezina last year. He's going to win his third this year. And there's no competition for him in this race right now. None. And nobody's coming close.
And I'm so tired of hearing, but the cap is going up. See, suck it. And it's like, take the cap jumping and shove it right up your keister, because there's so much context being left out of that with the fact that, again, like we said all along, look at the comparables and the market value at the time he signed the contract. It just never made sense. It just didn't. I'm so tired of hearing about it. That's why with the cap going up, I just am not even moved by it one bit, because the cap going up really only matters if you have guys locked up on long-term deals that
are good prices.
Yeah. And the only guy you could argue is Fox right now, but even he's not playing at the level you need him to.
No, he's not playing as a $9.5 million defenseman right now.
And maybe Vinny Trocheck. That's really
yeah.
That's really the list.
I would say JT Miller. I think that
Sure.
You're going to see it as the season goes along. That $8 million for him, especially even if you want to go on past numbers, $8 million for a player like that is actually really good, because just remember, the other guy that's supposed to be center is making 8.5 and he's dog shit right now. Just remember that.
And also, like, the cap is going up. Like, you don't think the players are going to ask for more of their share of the pie?
That's exactly it. It doesn't matter. And that's why I said it doesn't matter unless you have guys locked up long term, because guys are going to demand more. Like, if we were the Devils right now, who have Hughes at $8 million, Bratt at 7.8, Heischer at 7.2, that'd be great. Like, yeah, fucking awesome. But we're not there.
No. And the biggest problem.
Let's see how they do in the playoffs, though.
Well, yeah, they're also goalie merchants. But when they do it, it's flirting. But when the Rangers do it, it's harassment.
But the biggest problem is that you gave a deal that you didn't need to give out to a goaltender. Like, you didn't need to do this. Like, no one was going to get, especially with the season that he was having this year. Who the hell was lining up to give him $11.5 million? When you had Connor Hellebuck, who just signed in October 2023 for $8.5 million.
Can I stop you there, Phil? Because Mickey told you that there was teams that were going to line up.
Oh, I was just going to say that. He needs to shut the fuck up.
But Mickey told you, so clearly
my
there's something
source
to it.
Fuck you and your source. Fucking ass clown. Guy is such a fucking moron. He's like a 19-year-old kid parading around like he has sources. Yeah, who's your source? The drunk guy at the bar that your dad goes to? Please, fuck off.
People need to realize we also offset Heedle's $4.4 million salary the other way. Yeah, for the remainder of his contract, however many years that was. So it's only net like 3.6 million more to the cap over what Heedle was getting. He's way better, more points. Yeah. Like Heedle, we didn't talk enough about that. I really didn't want them to give up Heedle, but after seeing how they played against Colorado, against Carolina, I knew the Rangers had to make this trade. Like, not for this year. Like what
you're right. You're right, Joey. I'll say one quick thing. Reactionary. Definitely a reaction to the trades that were made in the past week. But you're right, reactionary.
Yeah. Like Heedle, you could see he was the only guy in the Rangers that skated with speed. The only one that could carry the puck in, make his own zone entries. Create I went back to that Florida game before the new year. You know, that game completely turned around because of him. He had like one of the best second periods, the best periods in his career, honestly. Like every shift he was out there, he made something happen. And the whole reason the Rangers got back in that game was because of him. They should have won that game if it weren't for Miller's stupid defense and Lindgren not backing into Shesterkin, you know. But Heedle was like a force. And that was why I was like, all right, this guy is a star. He's going to be a star. But the only issue is anytime the guy gets hurt, you really, really have to hold your breath. Like he would run into his own teammates and skate with his head down every now and then. It's just not good. You can't keep going like that. And if they held on to him and he got hurt again, you'd be trading him for pennies on the dollar. Same issue as Kakko. Same issue as Nils Lundqvist. You're lucky to get a first-round pick out of that, and that turned into pretty much Gabe Perreault.
Yeah.
Kravtsov. There you go. Hayek. Like Brett Howden. You wait too long on these guys, you're never going to get anything back for them. So this is the right thing for the Rangers to do. They had to do this. Love him, but I think they had to move on from him.
Before you jump in, Phil, a little bit of a standings update now. I just scored the overtime winner for the Islanders while I'm on this podcast, ironically. And that puts the Islanders out 55 points, and the Lightning, who lost in overtime, gained a point today. So not a good day in the standings for the Rangers.
That was like I said, damned if we do, damned if we don't gain. And the worst possible outcome happened. Great.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of how the Rangers organization is currently run. Like, you guys saw the article about VZ, right?
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah.
It's just, it exemplifies the culture. Like, it just...
what has that guy done to deserve the gripe that he has?
That's also true.
That's my question. Like, I understand you want to play, but you really haven't been effective when you've been in the lineup. Yeah, this is true. It's absolutely fucking true.
Yeah.
But I just
why this season though? Like, too many players are having issues this season. Why this season of all seasons? Is it because Trouba had an issue?
It's one thing after another, and it's just like, let me whine, let me cry. Like, oh, please, like, stop. Like, you weren't that great in the lineup. Listen, like, do I like the guy? Yeah. You know, am I happy that he played okay last year? Yeah. Okay, fine. Like, but it gets to a point where, like, these guys have got to stop whining about the playing time and go out there and make a friggin' difference. Go out there and make a difference. Stop crying about it. Stop crying to the media. Earn your playing time. It's like Kakko. Oh, I'm so unhappy about my playing time. Oh, let me go and cry about it. No, this is not ending yet. But it's just like Gaudreau played like crap for the vast majority of that contract. Has
And
this
whined.
one magical
I'm so shocked.
insanity
Why
run in
did
the
I get
playoffs.
traded?
Oh my god! Like stop.
Don't they teach you like growing up like to not do that? You know, don't they teach you that stuff? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, that just seems
No, you
something like
can't
you
whine
learn
about
over
not
time.
getting playing time. You have to go out there and give the coach a reason to play you. Like you have to force them to play you, and none of these guys have. Kravtsov's another one, whiny and entitled. Yeah, sure, Michael Haley should have never been in the lineup, and he should have never been on the fourth line
Yeah.
with Brendan Smith playing on wing. It was the most absolute stupid freaking thing I ever seen in my life. And that's why when Phil DiGiuseppe came along that year, he was actually an upgrade over those guys. Which is sad.
I liked Giuseppe when he came.
Well, yeah, we all did
Because he was
because he was an
Italian.
upgrade over those two clowns. But like it's just you have to go and earn your playing time, and none of these guys have. And it's promoted a culture of whining to the media, and that's why this has happened over the last 5 years now. Hedel had a problem with Quinn. Kako had a problem with Quinn. Kravtsov had a problem with Quinn. And then it went over into other coaches, and it's still here. I mean, it's like a fucking cancer that needs to be cut out from the body.
Yep. And there it is again. There it is again, like the organization's failure to admit when they're wrong. Yeah, the players too. At some point, you have to realize, like, damn, maybe I should step up and be better. It goes back to them too. It's like just all around is no one wants to admit that they suck.
Round and around we go.
Right.
But again, this is not the first time this franchise has had a country club mentality problem. Same thing that happened during the dark days, and it's happened again. And again, it's like what you said,
Mid
Joey.
2000s, you talking about?
Yeah, when they had that long stretch from '98 to 06 where they didn't make the playoffs. Or
Phil,
from
take us into what life was like in the mid 2000s for a fan that didn't start watching until after
You want the
2010.
dark ages, or do you want the Yager and Lundqvist era?
No. Like the dark ages, like when they missed the playoffs and stuff before Yager.
Well, I mean, that all started with them basically. I mean, they were right to lowball Messier. They were right to not give him what he was looking for. He wanted 18 million over 3 years, and for a guy that was 30, 35 going on 36 and had some injuries over the last couple of seasons, like they were right to do it. They wanted Sakic. And if any of you watch the Saving Sakic documentary, it's actually really good.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah, very good documentary.
it's a
Watch
great
it.
watch.
Yo, you did?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Awesome documentary. I want to hate Harrison Ford for it, but I can't because he's played so many roles that I've liked, even though fuck Air Force One. But it's just you missed out on that. You went to LaFontaine. LaFontaine gets hurt in practice, gets his last concussion that ends his career by colliding into Mike Keane, of all people, and they deal Mike Keane to Dallas later on that year for Todd Harvey, of all people. And then they made the wrong moves. It was the wrong move after the wrong move, and then Checketts eventually sold to Dolan. That was really like the big thing, but it was just...
That's when Dolan took over in the 90s?
No. Dave Checketts and ITT owned the Rangers for a while. And then they sold in like 99 to 2000, I think they sold it to. And then Glenn Sather came in.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I always thought the Dolans owned the Madison Square Garden. Okay.
No, Dave Checketts and ITT owned it. It's funny because they actually talk about Dave Checketts comes in for the Saving Sakic special, and he talks about his relationship with Charlie Lyons, who owned the Colorado Avalanche at the time. But it's just they went after guys based on name value that they thought that they could come in and help out. And there was a country club environment in that locker room where nobody took accountability for anything. And that's why they brought Messier back for the second term, because they thought he would help fix that. Say there was like, okay, like there needs to be some leadership and accountability in this locker room. Messier can come fix that. But the problem was that Messier was 39 going on 40, actually turned 40 in January of his first year here. He wasn't the same player. He still had a really good year that year, almost 70 points. But
wow.
Yeah, at
wasn't the
39
same
going on,
player. Okay, yeah.
he was Messier was incredible. I wish you guys got to watch Messier, like really watch Messier in his prime, because he was something else. But the problem is that they just kept going after the wrong guys. They neglected defense. Mike Richter was very inconsistent. Like there would be times where Mike Richter looked like he was a Vezina caliber type guy, and then there were other times where he was letting in the softest goals you've ever seen. Like people think Shesterkin could be frustrating. Richter was infuriating at times, but the defense in front of Richter was far worse towards the end of his career than anything Shesterkin has ever dealt with in his life, including this year. So, Brian Leach tried to do what he could do, but he couldn't really hold anything up. You bring in guys like Vladimir Malikov and Bruce Driver, and they do nothing. Malikov hurt half the time. And then they start bringing in other names, and it's all puck-moving defensemen. Tom Poti, Boris Mironov, what the hell? Who was the other one that I'm thinking of? No, Ozolinch came a little later, but it just they didn't address defense, and they didn't address character in that room. And Messier could only do so much. And then when Graves got traded to San Jose, that was a leader that they lost, because Graves wore an A, and he was a by example type guy. But it was frustrating because you knew what was going on, and when they brought in Bobby Holik, because they wanted Holik badly. They wanted him because he was another one. He was a character guy, and he came from New Jersey, and he was a proven winner, and all this other shit. And Holik, when he got there, they're like, they paid me like a first line center, but I'm not a first line center. Like when he said that just showed everyone the amount of dysfunction that was going on from top to bottom in that organization. So, like,
what did they pay him?
So
at the time, this was like before the salary cap, right?
This was before the salary cap. It was a 5-year deal worth $45 million.
Oh my!
$9 million per.
Wow.
And Toronto and Philadelphia had their bids over $8 million. They were the two other finalists in the whole league sweepstakes. I remember being so happy that we got him. Then I looked at that contract. I was like, how the hell did you pay Bobby Holik $9 million per year? And I knew things were all screwed up there. I mean, they didn't do that. Say they wanted his man, and that he was willing to go to any price to get his man, and he got it. But it didn't help. So it just the locker room, the way that it is with the whining and the crying and the lack of accountability and everything like that, it reminds me of that. But it's not nearly as bad. And then not only that, you were missing the playoffs by that much, and you were trading away first-round picks. And then the first-round picks that they did make, Hugh Jessamine, didn't freaking work out. So it was hopeless back then.
It sounds pretty similar, like what's going on here. Like you were talking about Richter, volatile. Like sometimes he looked good, like amazing, and then other times you can't compare it though.
No, it's not, because there was an understanding that it was a country club back then. Like people were coming in to get their last paycheck.
So like you're saying today, like we don't know if that's the case here with the Rangers.
It doesn't seem like it's the case, but back then it was.
Yeah, and I think they shifted. I think that Vince article a while ago kind of said that they were shifting away from that with Drury making those moves, cutting off communication between, what was it, like the social media person and.
Well, I think the social media person went on like I think went on like a date or hung out with like one of the players or something.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, so there's more to that. I can't really discuss that, but there's a little more to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like that makes sense to like how the organization has changed, like from that other style to it almost seems like that was better. I don't know what it was before. What before Drury came in? No.
Before Drury came in, everything was all right. It's now that's the problem is that they essentially quit on him because they didn't like the fact that he put out that memo and put Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba's names publicly out there. And like, listen, I get it, I understand it, but you also signed these contracts. It is on you as a player to live up to the deal that you asked for. And you could say, oh, well, the club gave them that deal. They were dumb enough to do that. They shouldn't do that. It takes two to tango in a contract negotiation.
Right. Like he should, like if Drury's the boss, right? He should be able to say like, hey, I'm paying you this money. Go and play up to what you're worth. Like you should at least be able to say that. If you don't do that, I'm going to move you. At least be able to float that out. But apparently that's like not acceptable in NHL world. Like and people say like, all right, yeah, Drury was also in a locker room. Why would he knows what it's like to be a player. Why would he betray his colleagues like that, you know? But I'm like looking at this, Drury's also a boss. He's got to, put his foot down a little bit here. He can't let people walk all over him.
No. And that's a guy that he's another guy that did a lot to win. I mean, he won a Stanley Cup and he was a key part of that run in 2001. Got to remember they lost Forsberg during that run with the spleen. So he didn't play like the last 2.5 rounds of that playoff run.
I watched that documentary so many times.
What?
The 2001 Avalanche documentary. That's the documentary Zuccarello used to rent all the time.
I've seen that, yeah, and it's a good one. But
yeah,
Drury was somebody who again would do just about anything he could to win, and he was a good player. He understood what it took to win. Like he had that winning pedigree, and that's why, it's like as a general manager, I'm not really not sure of what I think of him as a general manager. Yeah. I mean, the jury's still out, and I understand why people don't like him as a GM. But as someone who understands what it takes to win and building a roster, I understand now why he's going away from you don't see him drafting Russians and like that in the first round anymore. He's done with that.
It's too risky for him. I like the way he's drafted. I want to trust him, but at the same time, I'm like Evan and Matt are I'm so on the fence with him now. Years ago when before he became president and GM of the Rangers, I was all over this guy. I thought he was the next, the next big executive. I thought he was going to be great. And now I don't know how to feel. I really don't. I don't know how to defend him anymore. I just can't. I don't know I can't put it into words. I don't know. Because some of the moves make sense, and then some of them are just really head scratchers. And it's just the fact that he got value back for Trouba. How does he always do that? How does he get rid of Barclay Goodrow without giving up anything? But then, maybe he overpays for Will Borgen. He shouldn't have signed this Shesterkin extension. The Buchnevich trade. It's so hard for me to judge this guy. I don't get it. I don't know.
I wish Pittsburgh grabbed him.
But that's why
I'll leave it at that.
But that's why, Joey, that's why I always tell you, that's why for me, I can never give Chris Drury credit because for every good move he does equally as something stupid the other way. I'm just bro, I can't give you, I don't know.
That or it's what
Carson, my feelings on Drury.
That or it's what Carson and I discussed with Brody Van Wagenen, where he'll make a move, but there's a catch. There's just
a name right there.
There's always a catch when he makes a move. The Taco trade, given the situation, I still didn't hate it as much as others. But then he goes out and gives Will Borgen a stupid extension. There's just always a catch to whatever it is.
Why?
It's but wait, there's more, but not a good thing.
Why did he need to give Will Borgen that extension right away? Like it just
That was
to me,
not
to
expecting
me,
that.
it just seems like he was just trying to justify the Kako trade.
And then they were saying that they were going to try Schneider on the left side, possibly with Fox. Is that going? Do you guys think is that a thing?
I mean, Schneider's played left side with us before. I would personally, I don't care for Vakanainen. I don't think he's that good.
Yeah.
I think that if you have him as a 7, okay, fine. Me, I would kick the tires on Brant Clark in LA.
Yeah, I heard about that. I heard
they're scratching this guy and he wants to play and he's putting up a bunch of points. They need puck movers. Like everybody talks about Jones and how much of a difference he would have made against Florida. I don't know if he would have made the difference. I think Hannafin would have been the guy.
Yeah.
You would have gotten Hannafin last year's deadline. Okay. I think that would have been the thing. You need guys that can take a hit and move the puck quickly and precisely. Jones, yeah, he can move the puck, but I don't know how he'd be able to handle Florida's forecheck. That's my concern. I'm not saying he wasn't a better option than Cement Boots Trouba, who running around thinking that he's friggin' Chris Jericho with his bionic elbow right now, or Macho Man Randy Savage coming from the top rope from freaking heaven trying to fucking flying elbow drop somebody. But like I do think that a puck mover would have made a difference. I think probably more of a difference than Jake Gensel.
They still need one they still need one, not just this year, going forward. They need another one.
If you would have told me that you would have gotten Vetrano and Hannafin at the deadline last year, now you can convince me that team could have won the cup.
I like that. I think so too. I think Vetrano would have been a much better. Well, you needed a 3C too. You needed like someone to replace Heedle.
Well, Vetrano and Henrique.
Henrique, and Hannafin. There you go. I would have done that. Yeah. I would have been all over that.
They didn't have the cap to do that because they didn't want to throw
the great captain
insubordinate on LTIR.
The great 8.
Yeah, the great Jacob Trouba, who's such a captain that he would never sit out when he's injured and do what's best for the team.
And it goes to show you like what dysfunction's going on in that front office, because you can't corral the guy that's supposed to be your captain. Like you can't be like, hey, like you're clearly not healthy. Like sit.
Yeah, I don't know who's available. The only puck moving defenseman I think might be available this trade deadline is like Rasmus Anderson. I don't even know.
I don't even think
Thomas Chabot. If Ottawa falls out of it, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think Ottawa's going to move Chabot right now.
No, I don't think so either.
I would move Chabot for Keandre Miller though.
Yeah. I remember that conversation we had. What was it, like a month or two ago? I was just thinking about it today. I would definitely do that in a heartbeat.
I don't know if Ottawa would, but I would absolutely do it.
Yeah, I don't know if Ottawa would do it either, but Chabot and Fox as a pair would be good. Like they don't have a true pair there. And it's not like having a true pair with Fox is gonna make Fox like play like up to Hughes and McCarr level. Like I think Fox needs to improve his skating a lot. He looks really slow. Really slow. I don't know. What was it? The first or the second? No, that was the second goal. Pasternak's first goal, I think. I don't know what he was doing. Phil, can you take me through that? Like, he looked so slow. Like he had no urgency to get that puck out.
So the one where Pasternak scored from in the slot?
Yeah, when no one was covering the net, but like Fox was behind the net and he got to the puck first, but he fell.
I think it was Patras came in down the left, down the right side.
Yeah.
His left wing, Fox's right side. And he just did not take him to the boards. He had 2 chances to do it. And he just didn't do it. And then he plays him soft behind the net. Lindgren commits the cardinal sin of covering absolutely nobody in front when his partner is behind the net. One thing they teach you early playing defense is if your partner goes behind the net, you have to stay in front unless you have a center covering that spot.
Which we've seen now twice within. We've seen it 2 games in a row now because Miller did it last game. But
yeah,
sorry, go.
Well, Miller's good for that like once a game practically because he just roams wherever the hell he wants. There's another one. Zero accountability when he plays like a friggin' rover, and he's like a dog chasing his own tail. Like I feel like I'm listening to the Joker describe how to play hockey. I'm just like a dog. I like to chase my own tail. like what are you doing, Keandre? Like I don't get what you're getting out of that because when you do that, it creates such a problem because someone has to go cover your position. And that's where the mix-ups start. And that's what Laviolette tries to avoid with his system. But you have guys like that that just run around out of nowhere. Fox has been on the wrong side quite a bit. Lindgren, I don't know what is going on with that guy. Can someone see if like he followed Aaron Rodgers to like whatever foreign country and decided to do ayahuasca with him or something? Because like that's what Lindgren looks like he's playing on. I am one with the ice. The ice is beautiful. These lights are amazing. That's what Ryan Lindgren looks like he's doing right now. He looks like he's just sitting around on the ice, like checking out the lights, like he's like a newborn watching hockey on a TV screen. Like just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, all over the place. He needs to get scratched, and then he needs to get traded, or he needs to just get traded. Like
they need to just move him. If they scratch him, they acknowledge that his value is crap, which it probably is at this point because I know a lot of like I've heard Elliot Freeman, even Jeff Marek has even said it, where like if Lindgren is available, he's the type of defenseman that somebody will take because they want guys that'll play in the trenches.
Yes.
And yeah, sure, but it's like
man.
I can't help but laugh at this.
No, the fact that GMs would say that about Lindgren.
Yeah, just
that's what they say. It's just, and you know what? GMs value these tough stay-at-home defensemen.
Ben Sherratt went for a first-round pick, baby.
This is exactly why I was screaming all offseason to move this guy, because at the draft, I felt you could have maybe got like a second-round pick for him, or maybe even more. Who the hell knows? But instead, they just ran it back with him for no reason at all. I can't.
I hated that. I was so underwhelmed with what they ended up doing in free agency, and they just like, yeah, let me bring back Miller or Lindgren for $4.5 million. Let's not get Chikrin. No, let's not do what Washington did.
To be fair, Trouba derailed everything.
Yeah,
he derailed everything by doing what he did. And I know that the players' union would fight it to the death, but there should be something that should have been done about what he did. Because that's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. He didn't have trade protection, and he went and told teams that he wouldn't play. He had his camp leak that. Like, that's bullshit. And I know there's no way to prove it or anything like that because that, the beats aren't going to turn around and say, oh, I got it from this guy. Oh, I got it from that guy, under investigation. But, like, it's.
What I don't understand from that is the only thing that doesn't make sense is when it came to July 1st, right? Why couldn't he have just put him on waivers? Why couldn't he have just done that?
Because that would have made sense.
Yeah. I mean, I would have done
did the same thing. Did the same thing as he did to Barclay Goodrow. There was a sweepstakes. There was 20 teams interested in him over the summer. 20 teams. You mean to tell me not one of them would have picked him up? Wouldn't have made a claim on him?
Not even that, but even I said if Drury even had a pair of balls to him on that, he could have said, "Okay, I'm going to put you on waivers, Most likely, due to the fact that it's $8 million, and probably not a ton of teams could be willing to take that cap space or even take on the cap space in the first place. You're probably going to go down to Hartford, and at that point, good luck. Good luck sitting down there in Hartford and playing. Because other than that, if you want to go, fine. At that point, go. But if not, and you're just going to sit here and play at Hartford, cool. I don't care. I'll go find a cheap value defenseman for $1 million. And at that point, now that's on him.
Hang on, Evan. Wait. Hang on. And don't even give me the like, oh, what about the public image look for Chris Drury? Like, that is already slandered. It's already written when you put Barclay Goodrow on waivers 15 and let him know 15 minutes before. That ship is already sailed, buddy. Long gone. So don't even worry about that.
That's what I was gonna say. You publicly embarrass him though by removing the C at the very least. That would have helped too.
Yeah, listen. I'll agree with. I mean, to be fair, I mean he did submarine their entire offseason, but they could have done that, and they absolutely should have at that point.
Yeah, no one said anything about it. Everyone was just, all the reporters were gaslighting us like, oh, you can't say anything about the players' lives. You can't say anything about this. I'm like, who is saying that?
Jacob Trouba's wife is none of Chris Drury's concern.
What? Yeah, like, what does that have anything to do with this? All we're saying is he breached the contract, and Chris Drury should just put him on waivers. Why can't he do that? Why is no one saying anything about that? Why is no one asking anything about it? Radio silence. Nothing. Radio silence. Nothing. Like, we don't exist. That irritated me the most out of the entire thing. More than the fact that Trouba wasn't going, was the fact that we never got an answer. People were asking, and the response was, well, you shouldn't be saying something about Trouba's wife. I never said anything about Trouba's wife. Why are you bringing him into the equation? Why? Doesn't make any sense. It bothered me so much.
I can't. There was a lot of things that could have been done. I mean, if they were able to move that $8 million in the offseason, I think you would have seen more moves. But I also think that they probably would have just used that to sign Igor, and they would have given him that extension right then and there, because they were really quick to do it. And then it just he made one great move in getting rid of Trouba, and then he days later he went and gave Igor that contract.
The same day, no?
Days. He did a couple hours later.
Oh, that's right.
Oh yeah, it was.
Sorry.
Oh God,
Sorry.
yes, that's right. Yeah, I remember it was a Friday. We were.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
we did the spaces.
It's a Wilpon Mets era's level of comedy. I can't.
It's so dumb. It's just no need. There was no need. You didn't need. At that point, you didn't even know if this team was going to make the playoffs, and freaking the way they were playing. It just they were on their way down. No, I mean Stamkos wouldn't have been a good idea.
No, Gensel would have been good. Gensel I would have liked, but not Stamkos, not Martin. None of those contracts signed on day one of free agency were good. Maybe one or two. I would have the defenseman. It was the depth pieces Lazard and Sean Walker and someone. There was another one.
Walker would have been a nice
the Kings
fit.
defenseman.
He was fucking left-handed.
Matt Roy. Yeah, that would have been a good one for the Rangers.
Matt Roy, yeah, would have been a good. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's left-handed, but Sean Walker would have been a real good fit if he was left-handed. And they weren't gonna. No, Matt Roy's another righty.
Or if they were really going to go with Schneider on the left side, they could have just done it anyway and then had Walker play the right.
Yeah, but the problem is not all those defensemen are capable of playing on their offside. You gotta remember, now these days more than ever, defensemen coaches are really big about playing defenders on their right side, because it may not seem like much, but I can tell you from the experience, you need to be able to handle passes cleanly. and receiving passes like this as a defender and having to take that extra 1 or 2 seconds to get the puck ready to move out can absolutely hurt you on breaking the puck out of the zone. And that was a big problem against Florida. You saw it. They couldn't win those 50-50 races and move the puck quick enough because their execution was shitty. Now imagine doing that with a defender on his offhand. Makes it even harder. It's 10 times harder. Ask any coach that's coached at any sort of halfway competitive level. They'll tell you. Trust me on it.
I believe you. Oh,
It's just it sucks, but very few defensemen these days grow up playing both sides. Like, and maybe in a pinch they do, but the majority of their time is spent on their right-handed side, like whatever their corresponding side is, whether it's left or right. Because outlet passes and D-to-D passes are a hell of a lot easier to make when you're on that side.
mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, fellas, I'm gonna wrap this stream up. This is fun. Got a lot of good talking points in here. Super long episode for a podcast episode, man. This is crazy.
Rookie stuff.
I know rookie stuff.
Day.
Yeah, I did. I've done some marathons. Oh, Detroit just took a 1-0 lead.
Yeah. I know you guys, like the one time we all streamed for the trade deadline thing, I left at like after 3 hours. You guys like went on for like another 3 hours after that or something.
Yeah, and the Gensel streams last year.
Oh yeah, and then all the Gensel streams last year. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
2021 draft. I did a near 7-hour stream.
Oh my gosh.
That was crazy.
A lot of hockey talk.
Yeah.
You got to mix a little baseball in there.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for coming, checking out the stream. Thanks to Ranger Central, Matt, John, for coming out, joining the episode here. Go Rangers. I don't know what's going to happen here. We'll see. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.